Arman Khan thought he had escaped a lifeless marriage for a 22-year-old lover, but Maribel Soto was waiting in Texas with a secret life, 9 children, and a criminal trap that would swallow him whole. Arman Khan had spent years feeling as if his life had drifted into a quiet, suffocating routine. His marriage had become a cycle of responsibility, silence, and unspoken resentment. Each morning looked the same, each night blended into the next, and he often wondered if this was all life would ever offer him. One evening, while scrolling through social media to escape the monotony, he stumbled upon a profile that instantly caught his attention. The girl's photos radiated youth, confidence, and warmth, everything he believed he had lost. She introduced herself online as a 22-year-old from Houston named Lena, and her messages poured into his life like a sudden rush of fresh air. Arman found himself checking his phone every few minutes just to read her compliments and affectionate notes. She encouraged him to dream, to take risks, and to imagine a future where he felt seen. The more she praised him, the more he convinced himself that fate had finally offered him a chance to start over. Within weeks, he began pulling away from his marriage emotionally, believing that he had discovered something rare and irreplaceable. Unable to resist the fantasy she created, Arman made a drastic decision. He filed for divorce with surprising efficiency, barely stopping to consider the consequences. The moment the final signature dried, he packed his belongings into his car and left Arizona behind. As he drove toward Texas, the long stretch of highway felt like a bridge between his old life and a brighter, promising one he believed awaited him. Every mile brought him closer to Lena and farther from the life he no longer wanted. What he failed to see was how easily illusions can take shape when someone is desperate to escape, and how dangerous those illusions can become. Arman reached the Houston cafe earlier than planned, his nerves buzzing with hope and anticipation. He had imagined the moment countless times during the long drive from Arizona. He expected a young woman rushing in with bright eyes, long hair, and the same glowing smile he had memorized from her photos. Instead, the moment the door opened and a tired-looking woman entered, his entire vision collapsed. She scanned the room, locked eyes with him, and walked over with an uneasy expression. Arman realized instantly that nothing about her resembled the person he had fallen for online. She introduced herself with a name he had never heard before. She wasn't Lena. She wasn't 22. Her real name was Maribel Soto, a 49-year-old woman who had lived a difficult, complicated life. The pictures she used online belonged to her daughter, copied from old social media accounts. She admitted this without shame, as though deception had become normal for her. Arman felt the weight of embarrassment and disbelief pressing down on him. He had left his marriage, his home, and the comfort of familiarity for a dream that never existed. As he listened to Maribel describe her struggles, he began to notice how much she already knew about him. She mentioned details he had shared during their months of messaging, where he worked, the loneliness he felt, the personal frustrations he tried to hide from everyone else. Arman realized she had studied him carefully, collecting pieces of his life as if preparing for something far more calculated than a simple online relationship. Confusion tightened inside him. He wanted to walk away immediately, but he had no friends in Texas, no job lined up, and no plan. Maribel seemed to sense this hesitation, and her calm, steady gaze made it clear she wasn't going to let him slip out of her world so easily. Maribel insisted that Arman come with her, claiming it was safer than wandering around the city alone. With his belongings still in his car and no clear destination in mind, he reluctantly followed her to a neighborhood far from the main streets of Houston. The houses grew smaller and more worn as they drove deeper into the area. By the time they reached her home, Arman felt a heavy sense of unease settling over him. The place looked overcrowded, with toys scattered outside and laundry hanging from every corner of the porch. Inside, the environment was chaotic. Children of different ages moved through the rooms with practiced familiarity, barely glancing at him. The air felt thick, filled with noise, tension, and a sense of constant movement. Maribel seemed unaffected by it, moving through the house with the authority of someone used to managing the chaos. Arman placed his bag in a corner, unsure whether he should stay or walk out immediately. When evening came, he tried to slip out quietly, telling himself he could find a motel or sleep in his car if necessary. But Maribel confronted him in the doorway, insisting that leaving so abruptly would put him at risk. She reminded him that he had no job, no local contacts, and no stable footing in the city. Something about her confidence unsettled him. She behaved like someone who expected obedience, not cooperation. Over the next few days, Arman observed the house carefully. A locked shed in the backyard caught his attention. Delivery boxes arrived at strange hours, always placed behind the house instead of at the front door. Maribel received calls that made her pace restlessly, her voice dropping to a low whisper whenever anyone passed by. Even the children reacted oddly, falling silent whenever certain visitors appeared. It became clear to Arman that the house held secrets far more dangerous than a fake online identity. Every instinct warned him that he was no longer just a guest, he was trapped inside something he deep.
Late one night, Arman noticed Maribel leave her room with unusual urgency. She slipped on a jacket and carried a small flashlight, moving quietly through the hallway. Curiosity and fear pushed Arman to follow her at a distance. He watched from the shadows as she made her way to the backyard, heading straight toward the locked shed he had wondered about since the day he arrived. She removed a tiny key from inside her shoe, confirming that whatever was hidden inside was meant to stay secret. When the shed door opened, a dim glow spilled out. Arman moved closer, careful not to make a sound. Inside, he saw shelves stacked with items that made his stomach twist, dozens of forged identification cards with different names, large bundles of SIM cards, stacks of prepaid debit cards, high-end laptops running unfamiliar software, and scattered notes filled with numbers, addresses, and personal details. It was instantly clear that the shed wasn't used for storage. It was a fully functioning fraud operation. Maribel stood in the center, typing quickly on one of the laptops. Arman noticed folders labeled with men's names, financial records, and copies of messages, his included. Every conversation he had shared with Lena had been cataloged and used to create documents tied to his identity. His bank details, his home address, even information from his divorce papers had been noted and stored. The realization hit him hard. He hadn't been lured to Texas by affection or admiration. He had been targeted. Maribel had built an online persona to attract isolated men and pull them into a system designed to exploit their vulnerabilities. Arman felt a cold rush of panic as he backed away from the shed, careful not to draw attention. He understood that he was entangled in something far more dangerous than heartbreak.
He lay awake until
wasn't just
sunrise,
deceptive.
pretending to
She was
sleep
running a
each time
criminal
footsteps
network,
crossed the
and he had
hallway.
walked straight into the center.
His mind raced with fear and urgency. He needed to escape before his name became another fully crafted identity in her folders. When the morning finally arrived, the house fell into its usual routine. Children rushed to get ready for school, Maribel busied herself with phone calls, and the noise of daily life created the perfect cover for someone trying to disappear. Arman picked up his small bag, stepped out quietly, and walked toward the street without looking back. Each step felt heavy, as if the house itself was watching him go. He reached the edge of the block and finally allowed himself to breathe. Just as he prepared to hurry toward the main road, he heard footsteps approaching fast. His heart sank, expecting one of Maribel's associates. Instead, it was her oldest son, a teenager with tired eyes and a cautious expression. The boy didn't speak. He simply handed Arman a small black notebook. When Arman opened it, he froze. Inside were detailed records of every man Maribel had targeted, names, birthdates, bank information, social profiles, and notes about ongoing identity transfers. His own page had been filled in almost completely. One more week, and his financial life would have been stripped apart, piece by piece. The boy gestured toward the road, silently urging him to leave. Arman understood that the children were trapped and didn't want another victim living under their roof. He walked for miles until he reached a police station. After handing over the notebook, officers questioned him for hours before launching a raid on Maribel's home. She was arrested that same afternoon, along with 2 of her older children who had helped manage the operation. Arman eventually rebuilt a quieter, more cautious life. He carried the memory of Texas as a lesson, a reminder that desperation can make illusions look